their license. So, do you have any questions about the case highlights?
On the employee licensing, is this visually employees that are witnessed in the transactions on the facility on site, or is it more of a list off the site of the registered facility? Or is
Right.
it
These
both?
were all but one of these were all from inspections. So the inspector saw the
Activity.
employee selling the part or whatever the activity was.
Because I know we had some workshops in different scenarios of folks being up near or around or involved with the sale or the buy of the salvage part or vehicle. So we just want to see and make sure, obviously, everybody's licensed within our facilities. That should be, so.
Okay.
I don't think we have anything on that.
Okay, if there's no other questions, then I'll go over the statistics just very quickly. So you can see that there were 28 cases closed in the program, and 32 were opened, so we're staying pretty, pretty much able to keep up with the amount of cases. The majority involved criminal background checks on license applications. 6 of the opened cases were from inspections, and 8 of them were resulting from consumer complaints. So, any questions about the statistics? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll do our regulatory program management division.
Good morning. I'm Todd Forrester with the Regulatory Program Management Division. Our division name has changed from compliance to regulatory program management. We also have a new division director, David Gonzalez, and a new deputy director in Lee Parham, who's here. Stand up, Lee. No, you don't have to. As far as projects, on April 5th, the Regulatory Program Management Division, along with General Counsel, members from Enforcement, the Licensing Division, and members of the Advisory Board reviewed the rules for APR for updating. And we're going to go over those shortly, but that's all we have. Are there any questions?
No, I really appreciate our workshop with that. It was great, and obviously we're going to talk about it here in a little bit. Do you have anything? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, next we'll talk about the executive office.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Advisory Board members, Nick Voinis of TDLR. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for your service to Texas. Want to kind of bring you up to date with what's going on around the agency. As usual, these are busy times around TDLR. I'll start with recently we received some good news from the governor's office in that he appointed 2 new commissioners to our board with terms that expire in 2023, so our board is back at full strength. The governor appointed Dr. Ray Callis, who's a physician anesthesiologist from Beaumont, and Dr. Gary Wesson, who's a retired orthodontist living in Bastrop, to our 7-member commission. And you can find additional biographical information on our website on those 2 gentlemen. Wanted to mention also that the commission next meets tomorrow, Thursday, May 24th, here in the same room. So our strategic planning process continues. We're in the process of completing that. This is something the legislature mandates all state agencies do every 2 years, and it's something that we take very seriously. 2 years ago, we identified 56 strategic initiatives that we addressed during last year's legislative session, and real happy to report that 52 of them were passed and were signed into law. I want to stress that all of our constituents had a voice in the process, from licensees to consumers to advisory board members, industry reps, and so on, and all of them were encouraged to participate. We had public sessions in Arlington and El Paso, Houston, McAllen, and Austin. And these sessions were an opportunity for everyone to share ideas and opinions on what we're doing, how we're doing, and how we can improve. and your industry was represented in these sessions. For those who were unable to make the sessions in person, we did make available survey questions on our Facebook page and the TDLR website for those people to participate as well. We had several that did that. We also conducted internal sessions with our staffs throughout the agency, and now are in the process of compiling comments and ideas and drafting the final report, which will be coming out in early June. Also want to talk to you a little bit about our outreach, including your website, and update you on some traffic numbers that are associated to this program. Over the last 6 months, the Used Auto Parts Recyclers website had 4,919 page views, and that's an average of 27 a day. 58% of those visitors came to the site from a desktop computer, while 39% did so from a smartphone, and another 3% from a tablet. The top reasons for visiting your website, number one was frequently asked questions, followed by administrative rules, forms, laws, and most common code violations for used automotive parts recyclers. Also want to remind you that we are active in social media on Facebook and Twitter, if you like to keep up with TDLR news and events there. And we also wanted to tell you that we have a group just under 6,000 subscribers that receive various email notifications, email blasts pertaining to your program, and if anyone would like to be on there that's not on there, you simply just go to the website and subscribe to those. We'll be glad to include you. If you have any questions, be glad to answer them for you.
No, sounds like a busy time for you guys, which is good.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate the sessions. Obviously, that's a great time for us to really get involved and hear from you, and you hear from us, so we really appreciate those sessions. They're very
Thank you.
helpful. Next, we'll talk about the work groups and possible discussions.
Good morning. My name is Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel. Today we're going to talk about the status of the work group that was authorized by the board on October 18, 2017. The board had authorized staff to address a question regarding which employees are required to have an employee license while working at a UAPR facility. The work group met on April 5th to address that question, as well as to review Chapter 87 as a whole and to make appropriate changes to address the question that the board had, and to refresh and update the rule chapter to reflect updates in statutory changes to the Transportation Code, Chapter 501, and the Occupations Code, Chapter 2309. The work group met and completed the assigned task, and we'll explore that in greater detail in the subsequent agenda item, and we'll ask for your approval to publish the rule package. And that's our report thus far.
Perfect. Well, I think the work group was very positive and long time coming, like we had mentioned, and again, just cleaning up the language and really having it more consolidated for us. It really helps us in identifying the things that we need to address. And obviously, there were some gray areas that we wanted to, we had questions on that we wanted answers on, just to make sure we're compliant within the industry and the people that are involved with the transactions. So I think that was been cleared up, and we've moved forward with the definition and all the things we need to comply with. So thank you for that, and we look forward to the proposed rule updates. Discussion of possible recommendation regarding the proposed rule amendments to 16 Texas Administrative Code, Chapters 87, 8710, 25, 30, 45, 47, 71, 72, and 80, as well as 87, 85, and proposed repeal. So.
Okay. Good morning again, Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel. As I just stated, the work group met on this rule package that you have before you on April 5th. And while it looks like wholesale changes have been made. I don't want to alarm anyone. Basically, the intent of this work group was to update and refresh the Chapter 87 to reflect the changes in Transportation Code, Chapter 501, and also in Occupations Code, Chapter 2309. So while you see a lot of strike-throughs and new language in some particular rule sections, is basically substantively, there's not really any major changes, and it doesn't really change what it is that you all have been doing over the years. It's just simply to catch up with changes that have been made in other statutes that you use to just basically get our rule section accurate. So, having said that, I'd like to go through each rule section just briefly and ask if you have any comments or questions. Okay, we'll start with Section 8710. Are there any comments or questions with regard to the changes that have been proposed there?
Questions? Maybe give a minute to look over it real quick. You guys have them? Anything you guys see? Nothing? I think we're good, Mark.
Okay. We're going to move on then to Section 8725. Small change there in subsection B. Any comments or questions?
Maybe you could just, this is where we're talking about the cashier again, right? On this particular section, of what we clarified and kind of cleared up as far as the definition and the questions we had and just.
Mr. Chairman, Mary Winston, TDLR, I just had a request from upstairs. They can't hear everybody on the board, so just make sure we speak into the microphone and introduce ourselves. Thank you.
Sorry. Go ahead.
8721 didn't speak to the work that they did. So if you read B, no person performing the work identified in 8724, that's talking about the work that they perform as an employee of APR. 8721 was a section that really didn't apply to that.
Okay.
That's why that change was made. It's not, it's just, I think it's just a clarification.
Gotcha, okay.
May I go back and ask a question about 8710? I'm sorry.
Sure.
There's one that refers to 5 or more non-repairable motor vehicles. Does that mean bought on a non-repairable motor vehicle title?
Which one?
Ugh. 10, a non-repairable motor vehicle.
And what was the question?
I know a lot of the times whenever you're referring to a non-repairable motor vehicle, yes, that's saying it's dismantled, but that also has to do with the type of title it's on. We process a lot of the TCEQ TERP vehicles. We purchase those vehicles on a blue title, but then we have to, surrender them to the state, and they become the non-repairable motor vehicle titles. So, does that apply to those vehicles? I understand we're destroying them.
Well, it's a definition, so are you saying, are those vehicles defined as a non-repairable motor vehicle?
Well, it says something about I can't find it exactly now, I'm sorry.
Are you talking about the 5 or more?
Yes,
That should be in 80s, it should be in the exemptions, I think
Okay.
is what you're talking about.
but is that 5 meaning any vehicle that's just parted out to meet that definition, or does that have to do with the title, is what I'm asking, I guess?
I believe that 5 or more refers to any vehicle that's parted out,
Okay,
because You may not have a non-repairable vehicle title when you get the vehicle, but if you're parting it out, that's when it applies.
Okay,
So if you purchase 5 or more motor vehicles, or I guess 5 or less, and you're parting them out, you wouldn't, that's what the exemption's for.
okay, that's
Yeah.
what, okay.
Okay.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the title?
No.
It's the destruction of the vehicle?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And we're on 8725 still, right?
Yes, we're
Okay.
still on the 8725.
I think that's just, again, one of the areas, I don't know if you have any questions on the employee license requirements, so we can discuss that a little bit more, but anything on the license, employee license? Okay. Okay.
Okay, then we're on the 8730. And this is something that was brought to our attention just recently with regard to exemptions. Originally, the exemptions we're talking about, and it read, the provisions of the chapter do not apply to, and you had a number of different situations to which the chapter wouldn't apply. And then we got to subsection 10, where it talked about that the provisions of the rule chapter didn't apply to salvage vehicle dealers. And we discovered that in 2309.004, it discusses in some circumstances in which the chapter would apply to salvage vehicle dealers. So what we wanted to do was basically reflect the language in 2309.004, where it states the applicability of the chapter to salvage vehicle dealers. And basically, in subsection A, it does reflect what's said in the rule chapter, that the chapter doesn't apply to a transaction in which a salvage vehicle dealer is a party. However, subsection B states the chapter applies to a salvage vehicle dealer who deals in used auto parts as more than an incidental part of the salvage vehicle dealer's primary business. So there seemed to us to be a slight conflict between the rule and the statute. So what staff is proposing is a slight change to this particular section, 87.3010. And the change that we would propose would be that section would say, a salvage dealer, comma, subject to the provisions of Occupations Code 2309.004.
Okay. No, it's good. I mean, clarification on that's, I don't know if you guys, it's just basically detailing and really understanding the salvage dealer portion of it, so. Okay. That's good. I think we're good with that.
And to explain on 30, the not more than 5, we didn't want somebody to have, for a violation to occur, if they did casually repair 5, we wanted to make it 5 or less.
Right,
instead of
right.
fewer than 5. And I think that's the exemption you were talking about. A person who casually repairs, rebuilds, or reconstructs not more than 5 salvage motor vehicles.
I think she was talking more about the titling of these vehicles
Right.
that are being
So,
broke down versus,
right, so the same thing could apply. Does it have to have a salvage title? Well, no, because if you go to the definition of salvage motor vehicle, it says has damage or is missing a major component part to the extent. So it's not saying it has to be titled as a salvage motor
Okay.
vehicle. It's saying if it is a salvage motor vehicle.
Okay. Thank you.
something on 30 there with the definition, a person who casually, could you kind of elaborate on casually or the kind of definition of that? Obviously, some people read the word casual, sale, casually, repairs.
And there is a definition for casual sale.
Okay, right.
The sale by a salvage vehicle dealer or an insurance company of not more than 5 non-repairable motor vehicles or salvage motor vehicles to the same person during a calendar year. This term does not include a sale at an auction to a salvage dealer, the sale of an export-only motor vehicle to a person who is not a resident of the United States, or a sale to an insurance company, out-of-state buyer, or governmental entity.
Gotcha. I think that's really key, and obviously the definitions are at the forefront, but just understanding when we see that whole casual definition and what it really means, so thank you.
And the word casual sale, that may be just simply a term of art that's in the statute, Chapter 501 of the Transportation Code. So I think that's probably, necessarily where it came from. But we are mimicking that particular definition in 501.091.
Right, okay. I think we're good on 30.
Okay. Okay, then we're going to 8745. Any questions or comments on that?
No? Makes sense.
Okay. Then we are at 87.47. Any questions or comments?
No?
Okay.
Good there, too.
Then moving on to 87.71.
I think we had some questions on the actual start date of the acquired part or vehicle. I'm assuming that's going to be the bill of sale from the purchase of where we get the vehicle or the parts, correct? As far as when it starts, as far as the retention records?
Yes, and that's actually kind of a difficult question that I spoke and talked to DMV about that. Because they deal with salvage vehicles, when do they have to decide? Is it from the date they purchased it? And the way DMV looks at it is, from the date they decide they're going to part out that vehicle.
Okay.
And it's not a perfect way for us, but I don't know that we're in a position to tell you what you have to do with the vehicle.
No, not necessarily that. It's just again, kind of like the titling, because we purchase a large portion of our vehicles through the auction. So within the titling and the actual transition of the sale versus when we get the car, and like you're saying, part the car out, there's a time period in there before we actually get complete ownership of the vehicle, even though the sale date or the bill of sale, because again, when inspectors come in and we're looking at the documentation, we're looking at when we purchased the car from the auction. And I guess my question was, does that start from that date versus, again, the titling and the signatures on the back of the titles and all the?
Yes,
Start.
because they're looking at the date you purchased the vehicle versus when you submit the ownership documents to DMV.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, is there a huge lag time in between
Well-
getting the vehicle?
Well, for my facility, we buy over 100 vehicles a week, so getting the titles from the auction houses is a time period to get everything signed over and surrendered to us as far as from the auction. So there's a little gap, but again, I just want to get clarification because sometimes there is certain, and I'm probably not the only one that has this kind of structure, but still there is a little gap on
Right.
when we.
Is it a significant enough time frame to affect the 31 days? Is it cutting it close?
Well, I know some of us are pretty spread out. We have within our industry salvage yards between one end of the state versus buying or acquiring a vehicle at the other end of the state. So there's a week sometimes on getting the vehicle physically to the location. So there is some days involved, but again, I just want to make sure within our industry we're compliant with when that actual start date is starting. and the
Right,
time it starts.
and I don't know that that's not an issue we couldn't handle. And you would definitely need to document when you actually got the vehicle. If you could show when you actually got it, I think that's an issue we could handle internally. Because I mean, of course, we don't want to make the time frame too close to where you essentially can't comply with the law and rules.
All right, okay.
This may kind of overlap what he was asking. With the DMV side, if we have our complete vehicle license, dealer license as well, not just the salvage license, to stay in compliance with this, we buy the vehicle complete. We have every intention of selling it complete. someone comes in for the right price, you know, they want most of the vehicle or certain parts. For this purpose, would we need to do some paperwork on our end, or?
And that's what I called DMV about.
Okay.
So you would need to document when you first parted the vehicle out, which you should have some documentation.
Right.
And so that would then be the 31 days.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions?
Okay, moving on from 8771 to 87.72. Any questions or comments?
Do we have anything in there for transferring businesses or moving to a different facility as far as a business to business moving to a different address? I know we obviously need to update between the address change and submit that through TDLR, but I just was wondering, is there anything else with that?
That's why we changed this. If you read the preview, like what was before, it's A said, before moving a place of business, a used automotive parts recycler must notify the department of the new location. Well, if the new location must have a new license.
Right.
And so,
No transfer versus new
right,
license. Okay.
right.
That's
And
that question.
that's why that was changed, you know, and you getting a new license is notifying us.
I think it's important for us to really make sure our industry understands that, and the stormwater, like it's mentioning it as well, because I think a lot of people be under the assumption that they're registered, but yet they move down the street or somewhere else, and it's going to carry over to that new facility. So I think that's really key that we need to.
Yeah, and as Todd said, if you look at what the previous language said, it basically does incorporate the idea of transferring. We do need to know where you're at.
Right.
Yeah. For all sorts of different reasons, yeah. It's a little different than from like DMV, if you were to change your location but stayed within the city limits, then you would not have to get a new independent dealer license if you were a dealer.
Right.
Right. But if you moved outside the city limits, then you'd have to get another license from them.
Okay.
Okay, we're on to 87.80. Any questions or comments?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Hearing none, we're going to move on to 87.85.
And I think what we did here is just basically made it 75 across the board, right? Is that, okay. So basically, the renewal versus the original is the same amount. Okay.
And the employee license would just be 25.
Right. Which is great, so I think everybody's gonna be happy with that.
Right, there was no more of those licenses out there at the higher cost, so it didn't make sense to keep them in the rules.
Right. No, I think we're good.
Okay, and then the ones there at the bottom are just simply the rule sections that had been deleted or going to be repealed. And that's mainly because they're already there in 2309 occupations code. And the whole purpose of this is to try to make it easier on y'all so that you're only going to chapter 2309 or you're going to the rules. You don't have to bounce over to 501 transportation code or anywhere else. We wanted to incorporate it just in these two areas to make it easier on the marketplace.
Well, again, this definitely simplifies, consolidates, and really helps us out. So again, I can't say enough for our workshop, and then speaking on behalf of everybody here in our industry, we really appreciate you doing this, and obviously a long time coming, so thank you very much.
Well, we'd like to thank all the staff members that are involved, and of course, the chairman and Bruce Orman involved in our work group. We really appreciate all the input that y'all gave to make this rule package look pretty good. The executive officers are also happy because it looks like we reduced the word count by 908, so
Yeah.
we got that down.
That was good.
One last question. I wanted to sort of bounce back to 8724 and 8725 and 26, just to make sure that y'all don't have any questions or comments on that, because I think there was at the October meeting a question about whether or not clerks had to be licensed.
Yeah, and again, I think we run into, within our facilities, the different people we have working in our facilities. We've gave some examples in the workshop, and obviously, a cashier involved with the transaction of the sale was determined. But again, if there's inspection coming about, and there's somebody that does come in, and that there's a person that is interacting with the transaction, again, I want to make sure within our industry, everybody understands that they need to be licensed with any kind of activity with the transaction of the sale or buying of the part. So I don't know if y'all have anything to elaborate.
What about just if they answer the phone, is that, if they answer price parts out, that's the person that needs the license and the cashier?
Yes, I think that's what we determined, is that somebody's selling parts over the phone, and then ultimately handling the money transaction of the sale was determined to be licensed, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it was kind of a cost-benefit type of analysis that we looked at. The fact that it's only $25 for an employee license, and the licensing division has a very quick turnaround on that. It just sort of seemed more efficient to just do it that way. And also it makes it, I think, easier for enforcement inspectors to come in there, and if they had to do any checks, it makes it a lot easier. So the cost versus the possible hassle, it's kind of negligible.
So it's when they walk in the door, whatever they see needs to be who's licensed.
And, you know, another reason was the background checks. So,
So on the person answering the phone, even if they're just simply basically relaying a message from our parts guy to the customer, they still should probably be licensed. Is that what y'all said?
Well, that may depend upon you, because the rule 87.24 is talking about licensing an employee that acquires a vehicle or used auto parts, and or selling auto parts. So if the person's whole occupation or job functions is they're answering calls, they're not involved in any link in the chain of the sales process or the purchasing process, then I don't think it would really make that much sense to license somebody who's solely doing those things. Yeah, but again, that's going to be up to you.
I mean, it's kind of like, is that all they do? You know, could they ever be in a position where that could happen? Then it might be in your best interest to get them licensed. Like, could they say, well, the price for that part would be this?
Okay.
And when we're only talking about $25 and,
Right.
you know, again, that's a business decision that you're going to have to make for yourselves.
Well, there'll be a lot of questions within our industry, again, because again, like we've saying, there's so many different functions we have within our facilities, and people that do, like she's saying, relay messages or tell somebody that a part is needed. But again, I think we just need to kind of go back to the initial definition of somebody in the transaction of the part or the car, selling or buying, and then just keep it kind of basic with that, because again, somebody handling the money and buying the part versus somebody on the phones, that's all transactions throughout the sale of this part or vehicle, so.
And we did have an extensive discussion at the work group about what's a sale. And, you know, of course, the rule doesn't really say anything about that, doesn't define it. The statute doesn't really define it. You know, I mean, I had to go into the Business and Commerce Code and just pull out what a definition of sale was. But again, you know, I think it's kind of a business decision that y'all would be making. And I can't speak for enforcement as to what they would do, what their inspectors would do. But, you know, it seems to me that it's more a person who's involved in the somewhere in the sales or buying chain.
And again, there's a process, so if somebody does get cited or something like that, talk to the attorney, try to explain, what it is they're doing. You might have a gray area. You might have a gray area, and that's one of those things we can't necessarily write rules for, but we have to they take them on a case-by-case basis. And they'll work with you. They'll work with you. So keep that in mind, too.
Absolutely. Any other questions? No? Again, thank you very much. This was great, and we've made a lot of strides, so thank you very much.
Okay, well, having completed that, what staff is asking for is your approval to publish the rule package with the proposed change to 87.30, Section 10. Let me make sure I get that right.
All good? I think we're approved. We can finally put it through.
We'll need to have on the record who made the motion,
Okay.
second.
Chad Terramina making the motion to approve.
I second.
All good? You're good.
Let's make sure, Mary Winston, Christine, did you get that? Okay, all right, good.
And I think that concludes this presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to recommendations and agenda items for the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, Mary Winston again. This rule packet that's being published, it'll be out there, and any comments we get back will be reviewed by our general counsel, and that would be put on the agenda for next time.
Okay. As far as any workshops, I don't think we're needing to suggest anything. I think we covered pretty much within the rule package, so I wouldn't suggest or entertain anything unless you have anything that we need to cover before our next meeting. No? I guess the next discussion will be the next time we can meet.
Mr. Chairman, Nick Bowinas here. We've got 2 dates for you to consider, both Wednesdays, September 5th and Wednesday, September 12th. I will mention the 5th is the week of Labor Day, but it's 2 days later.
Probably the 12th, and I would think probably, if that's possible.
You all in agreement? Okay.
You
Great.
good with that?
That'll be Wednesday, September 12th at 9 a.m.
It's good with that?
That's still the preferred time?
Everybody good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody have anything else, I think we'll adjourn. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.